Ladies and gentlemen, if we could go ahead and settle in and get started. We have some members of the committee that will be joining us lately. There are other committee meetings going on at this time. I appreciate everybody coming on short notice here today. Chairman Knox, Chairman Royal, and I are here. There will be, like I said, other members coming in and out. We want to touch base again and talk a little bit about the 07 budget. I'm going to ask you some questions about that as well as the 08 budget, given the posture that we find ourselves in. That posture is simply that we have a little more time to address certain issues. One of the things that I'm glad we could get together again prior to the recommendation so that everyone is not amazed and surprised when the document comes forward in the future that I had intended to do and probably would have called you in the interim, but since we're all here, let me tell you now. Any new money that goes into the 08 budget, any new program or position that goes into the 08 budget is going to be listed in our budget document as one-time funding. Okay, there will be exceptions to that if it is in driver services, for instance, if it is an ongoing project where there's a building being open that clearly we have built and we have to staff that building. Clearly that's something that you don't build a building and then leave it vacant. But any new personnel, or if in the budget it says additional X dollars to do this, to enhance this program, when it comes out of this subcommittee, it's going to be listed as one-time funding. Now, I'm glad we had an opportunity, and I'll give you, as we come to ask questions, if you want to have a brief dialogue on this, let me tell you why we're doing that. I have worries with continuation budgets and money that just gets in and programs that don't justify themselves over time. So the fact that it's listed as a one-time item doesn't mean that we're going to go grab. That's the first place we take money away, at the next year's budget. What it does mean is it's going to come before this committee front and center, and we're going to ask you next year. I can't remember exactly which line item. We'll find it here. There was one request for $700,000 in one department to enhance a particular program. We'll list that as one-time funding increase of $700,000 for that program, and then when you come back next year, this committee or its predecessors or predecessor will ask you, okay, how do we do with that $700,000? Did you do what you thought you were going to do? Do you need more? Show us a value. A perfect example of that is over in higher ed last year in DTAE, $600,000 expenditure on an annualized basis, trained 104 new nurses on an annual. That's a good value to me with our nursing situation. Chairman Smith did a good job putting it out there, but he put it out there as an item that he could review every year and see how it does. Perhaps, and I'm not on his budget committee, but perhaps that money gets put in again this year to build, if you will, another 104 nurses. Perhaps the legislature sees a value and we need nurses and doubles that money because they see the value they get for that money. So don't be taken aback. It's not any kind of a draconian measure that we're trying to do, but it just begs us to look at what we have in the program, because sometimes money will get allocated to a program. That program will start. You guys at the department level will find out that program's not working for you, so you'll cease the program, but sometimes y'all forget to tell us that the money's available again. So we're gonna help all of us communicate and know about that, if that makes sense. Now feel free. We want to be in a good and open conversational mode, but we're going to try to do that. And I understand in cases where you're hiring people, if you have pause and it says one-time money, but if they're doing their job and it's if they're doing and accomplishing what you want done when you ask for the program and it was approved, I feel confident the dollars will stay with the program. But there have been times that I've seen in my brief tenure here where money's been asked for a position. That position hasn't been hired for 3 or 6 months, sometimes not at all, but the money doesn't get given back for reappropriation or reprioritization. In our piece of the budget, we're going to use that as a go-forward mechanism. So as we talk about some of those things, if you have a question, I know driver services may ask that. We ask them to open 2 centers relative to the positions that go in there. those positions, won't be listed as a one-time funding this round. Because I just think that makes sense. I mean, if we put those monies into building those with those partnerships and those local communities, clearly we have to keep them lit and keep the people in there. But for new positions, we're going to list them as that, and that's just going to be the policy of this subcommittee as we move forward. Department of Law, I think we have 20 judges. I guess all lawyers think they want to be judges one day. We have 20 new lawyers that we're looking for in the AG's office. That we think they need them. I think at this point it'll help us with the SAG expenditures, but we too will list those so that we can ask the Attorney General when he comes in next year, how did those work? Did we do what we thought we were going to do with that? Do you need more? Could you have used less? So without further ado, I just wanted to kind of spread that along as we go forward, and we'll try to get through the 07, 08 with questions. I don't know a specific order we want to go in. I was kidding about if you're on the front row, we'll have you go first. Let's stick with the agenda. We'll go down the list and ask representatives from the Court of Appeals if you'll come up and ask the committee if they have questions in regards to that budget. Court of Appeals on the 07 document that I have is on page 4 of 18 on the 08 budget. The document from which I am working has them on page 4 of 35. Do you guys?
Yes, sir. I have 4 of 28, but I'm very flexible.
Okay. You're in section 5. We should be working. We're working from your numbers. I don't know. Did we have one?
You may have a 212
On the bottom in the House
Yes,
budget
sir,
office, is it 212 or 210 on there? Down the bottom left corner. Does it say House budget office 210 or 212? Neither.
It doesn't say either one, but I suspect I've got the same document you do.
Okay.
It's item 5.1, 5.11, and so forth
Yes,
down
sir.
to 5.16. To revisit the 07 budget quickly, I won't comment on the 4% versus 3% raise. I think y'all are very familiar with that
Yes, sir.
matter. I did want to comment on item 5.1.5, which is an increase in real estate. Actually, that figure includes renovations to the health building. As you all know, for security reasons, all our judges have been moved to the judicial building, which, for efficiency's sake, we wish had been done 10 years ago. But that required extensive renovations in the health building, which is being renovated anyway. We have absolutely no control over what the GBA charges for that, and they are charging $152,416, which is really the figure in 5.1.5. If they were a private landlord, we could negotiate with them and object to these charges and try to work something out. As it is, all we can do is come to y'all and say, please give us the money, because they've sent us a bill. So item 5.1.5 is not the $51,000 that y'all did nicely leave in the budget. It's actually $152,414, which we're hoping you will add. Also, y'all did eliminate the item 5.1.6, $98,440 for 2 new positions. Those positions are not new. We've always had those. It's just we left them vacant. For one of them, we didn't have the space until we moved to the judicial building. The other one, we just were trying to save money. And now we have rehired those people, and we do need them. I noticed that the Attorney General's office is adding 20 lawyers. There are now 190 Superior Court judges. Every session with local legislation, more state court judges are added, more juvenile court judges. All those people have trials, and the loser appeals. And we're still stuck with 12 judges. The way we push the work is instead of adding more judges, we ask for more support staff. If there are no more questions on 07, I'd like to turn to 08, if I may. And I'm not sure which document y'all are looking at, but I suspect it's pretty similar to the one I'm looking at. And Mr. Chairman, I want to say we are very pleased and happy, and we're happy to go. We like your idea about one-time funding for any enhancements in 08. We're perfectly comfortable with that. We can come back next year and show you what has occurred. The enhancements we're asking for are 2 additional positions, new employees. We're happy to have them on a one-time basis because we're confident we can come back and justify them next year. One is 1 additional lawyer. As I have said, we only have 12 judges. We're not asking for a new judge. New judges are very expensive, but we do need new support staff. And we're asking for 1 additional lawyer and 1 additional secretary. Both those are being brought on at the bottom of the salary scale. We're happy to come back next year and tell you what they've done during that time. Similarly, we're asking for, it says, off-site funds at an off-site location for disaster recovery, $30,000. That is indeed a one-time item. Just give us that money. We'll never ask for it again. That's a one-time item. In case there's some unthinkable disaster in the Atlanta area, we would have full backup in Macon. That is a one-time item. We wouldn't come back for it next year. Finally, item 5.1.7 says provide funds for renovation of the health building. Actually, that's a rent increase that the GBA has again imposed on us without negotiations. That's $21,487. Again, we're happy with that being a one-time item. We'll come back next year. If the GBA has reduced our rent, we won't ask for it again. I'm happy to reiterate the 07 budget we've commented on. We've covered previously the 08. We're very happy with the committee's policy about making them all one-time items. We think we can come back next year and justify them again, except for those that are really only one-time items that we won't mention again.
And let me clarify that one. I probably, and we've spoken with the budget office, I referred to them as one time. We're going to need to refer to them as a different type of thing so as not to get true one-time expenses, confused with to be reviewed. We're going to come with language about that, so I don't want to confuse it. But I think we understand what we're talking about. But you bring up a good point, Your Honor, in that we want to distinguish between the true one-time, I need this money to start a program, as opposed to a new program that we're going to have, and we're just going to have language that deals with that. So I appreciate your willingness to work with us on that. I think Chairman Knox had a question.
Just real quickly, for the benefit of the benighted, in that we probably need 1 or 2 or 3 more appeals court judges on the bench. My question is, why don't we have a request in the budget for another position instead of, when we don't have it in 07, we don't have it in 08?
No,
is there a
sir.
process we have to go through first before we can ask for it in the budget?
Frankly, Mr. Chairman, that's kind of a hot political issue, whether to add more justices to the Supreme Court, whether to add more judges to the Court of Appeals, and my personal feeling is that's up to y'all. We feel that we work very, very hard. The only way we possibly get the work done now is through having a huge support staff. Each judge already has 3 law clerks who are permanent law clerks, not just people right out of law school. These are career positions. And we have a central staff that I supervise of 9 additional lawyers. So with that, we've kind of kept our overhead as low as possible. There are several states with a smaller population than Georgia, which have more judges on their intermediate appellate court. Like North Carolina has, I think, 18. Louisiana has 46. I'm not sick. Yes, sir. I think every new governor creates more, and then he can appoint more, and I'm not citing Louisiana as a good example, but I think North Carolina, other states, California has 220 on their intermediate appellate court. In Georgia, but we have talked about coming back. Adding one doesn't work for us for efficiency reasons. We sit in panels of 3. And so it's probably best to wait for a population growth in a couple of years when we need an additional panel, an additional 3. Adding 1, we'd have 13, and then mechanically, we've had odd numbers before. At one time we had 9, then we had 10, and the 10 didn't work out very well. So we're talking in our long-range plan about asking for an additional panel, but I think we'd probably wait for a little more population growth. And then, to take another minute of y'all's time, our workload is driven not so much by, well, it's driven by population growth, but it's the growth of the trial courts, how many superior court judges, how many state court judges, and we also get direct appeals from juvenile courts. Even some probate courts can appeal directly to us. And the more of those there are, the more trials there are, the more business we have. But we think we can handle it now. If y'all would pretty please let us have these 2 more positions in 08. I'm sorry to give, my wife says you ask me a simple question, you always get a lengthy answer.
Well, you paid somebody for a lot of education so that you could do that.
Oh,
for
well,
us.
thank you, sir.
Attorney. So, no, I don't mean any disrespect at all. And in fact, you do have you've worked real well with me since I've been here, and I'll tell each of you as you come up this time through the process. I really appreciate everybody working with me, being new on this subcommittee. Chairman Willard, do you have a question?
I think he answered what I was going to suggest. That was a problem you had with trying to set up a panel. We did this a few years back, as I remember, under Speaker Murphy, allowing just one appellate court seat. It doesn't work because you got to work in a panel. So what you got then is people rotating around without ever really pulling the panels together. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any further questions in regards to this? Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The Judicial Council, we have that budget next. And Ms. Nesbitt, you don't really, I mean, you get the document you need. You don't have to go down through the entire budget. If you want, I'm just if you have an opening remark you'd like to make, you can do that, or I'll go to the committee for questions.
We can go right. I know that I have a large section, so it may be better just to go directly to the questions.
Okay.
Do you want to do 07 first?
Well, let's just open it up for the committee. Have any questions in regards to the Judicial Council? Is on page 5 of 18 of our tracking sheet. House Budget 212. Is that the tracking sheet everybody has? Is it the House Budget 212? 212. Okay. They're on page 5 of 18. Let me just ask you. You understand what we did as far as the Westlaw subscriptions for 07.
Yes.
We intend to bring those forward in 08, but just align them with the fiscal year. You also understand, and we had discussed about the ad we put in 6.4.7.
Yes, and I handed out a little handout on that explaining why we needed those funds.
Mm-hmm. Now, 07 with us, this in this particular position, we are in, and we were in looking at 07. You basically, in conversations before the committee and with me personally, there's not really anything other than what we, the monies we reduced for those two things that you feel like you can do without.
Correct.
You don't have any place. I know we were back and we were talking about the medical funding going forward in 08. Your representation, you told me, if you don't mind just telling the committee, do you have any funds in the Judicial Council budget that you can do without in 07 or 08?
We really don't, other than what you've already taken as far as the 6-month funding.
I thought Representative Powell was laughing at what we've already taken down there. So again, the Judicial Council needs this money for their projects. Does the committee have any questions in regards to this? In regards to 07 specifically? Yes, sir.
Does it include, does Nesbitt, the 6.4.7, which is that child support, 200,000? That's the funding for the hotlines, we called it, isn't it?
Actually, it's the funding for the programming changes to the calculator.
Okay.
Is that not correct?
Pardon?
Is that not to provide the calculator, push that out to the
And
user as a result of the calls that have
Right.
come in on the hotline?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And that's still there. Okay. Thank you.
We're hoping to work with child support to get that moving.
Thank you.
We've got, again, she had represented that to me in the past, that there's not really opportunity in their budget. That's as lean as they can stand.
Most of the members that are on the committee, remember, we took a significant budget cut last year, and so there really is not a lot there that we could shift around and reallocate.
Okay. Moving on then, if there are no further questions on 07, what do you have for us in 08 that you can do
There's
without?
a fairly long list there for all of the Judicial Council, and I'm on page 9 of 71. I think I have the same version as you do, 212.
We're actually on 210, which is a more detailed version. That's all right. And we're on page 5 of 35 because that just has our budget. It just have our budget things in there. But let me ask specifically, you understand, again, increased funds. Well, tell me, increased funds for a new program coordinator. This is
Which
going to.
number is
I'm
that?
sorry, it's on 6.2.5 in this document.
Okay.
You have the 210 version of the 212.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
That's the Office of Dispute Resolution.
Right. And now tell me, or tell the committee, is this is hiring a new position?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. So that would be one of our
That would be
things
one
that
of
we
the
would
ones.
list
The
somehow.
standalone
Yeah,
project.
we would list that. Chairman Willer had mentioned, and I think before Representative Powell got in, that we're going to take the posture, unless there's strenuous objection from the committee, that any new money or new positions are going to be listed, perhaps not one-time funding because that gets confusing, but going to be listed in such a manner that this committee can review them next year to make sure that the person was in fact hired and is doing what needs to be done before we just push that into a continuation number. So that would be a position, should the committee fund that in 08, that would be applicable in there. And also, we're going to meet with Chairman Ralston. I think you're going to do that on Monday.
Yes, we
about
have an
his
appointment with him
questions
at 2:30.
specifically in the Office of Dispute Resolution. Tell the committee about, and I know we talked about this the other day, but the increased funds to the University of Georgia contract for training. Are we getting more people trained, or is the university system just charging us?
No, there are more people to be trained. Those there are judges that are added every year. There are court clerks that are added every year, and so that is for the increase. And they have not received any increase for that over the last 6 or 7 years, while judges have been added over those years.
How much did they ask you for?
In this budget request?
Well, no. Well, I know he wants a total, and I want that as well. But how much did they ask you for this year, new money?
Under the contract, the $199.
But we just agreed to what they. I'm pushing back a little bit here on that because I want you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll follow up with Chairman Willard, or he can ask questions on his own. I think he asked, what's the value of the total contract without the $199,000?
$450,000.
So go ahead, Chairman Willard. Yes, sir.
That's a substantial increase. That's why we don't know those things till we find out asking it. That's quite surprising, rather.
And their budget is kind of broken into two parts. There's a part that is the contract that is for the training, and then there's some travel money for judges to go back and forth to the training, and that is in another part of
Yeah, that's not this.
Right, exactly.
I know we had judges, but we haven't put a 50% increase almost to it.
Can you provide for Mr. Parkerson the details of where we're at now, what they? Because I know this is almost like GBA and the marriage. I got a list over here that, and I should have said it before the judge came up. I've got a list of 3 things over here: the merit system, workman's comp, and GBA. To some extent, and some of you are users of GTA services that you just end up passing along. We're not going to be able to get to the end of that road in this budget cycle, given we're in session. But we're going to help you guys, and you guys are going to help us look at where those costs come from, because Chairman Willard is on to something here that, perhaps the University of Georgia is expending some money over there and then asking you to pick up the.
We'll be glad to get a detailed breakdown of where those funds are going and what the request is.
Why don't we do it on the basis of personnel going in for training? I mean, that to me is a logical way to do a contract. That's what most other private providers do. You bring people in, we do so much per head, as opposed to just a blanket dollar amount being paid to it.
And I will get with ICJE and try to get that breakdown.
One last question. If I understand, the Office of Dispute Resolution, is this the one that came over, is not now under the Supreme Court?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
And they certify and.
When did that change become effective?
They're still they still operate under the Supreme Court rules that were set for mediation. They just administratively, in order to streamline the administrative functions, came under the Judicial Council so that we could do their payroll and their expenditures, so that we could streamline those administrative functions.
Okay.
So they still do oversee those Supreme Court rules for mediation and do the same thing they've always done.
Gotcha. John? Let me call you back.
Any other questions? That was the continuing judicial education. Yep. Judicial Council, you'll see, we'll be doing some work in there in 646 and 646. We're not annualizing money. We'll be continuing that. I mean, it's just sort of an alignment relative to align that with the fiscal year. Next page. And again, we're annualizing some monies here that we'll do alignments with. But is your representation that all of these things are necessary to make this particular program work? There's not.
Are you talking about the health insurance and?
Well, no. I mean, I understand.
You understand
that's beyond our control. That's a discussion for a different day at how we. I mean, that's out there, and that's a big discussion for a different day. But just under Judicial Council, under 6.4, when you flip over to the back page, we're annualizing several things. I mean, I understand. Look, let me ask this: in 6.4.8, for instance, to provide funds for the state court judges mock trial competition. My understanding, this is a competition that's been going on for some time. That involves a lot of folks from around the state. Is this additional money, or is this money that we budget every year?
No, this would be one-time money, because the national competition is coming to Georgia, and so that would be a one-time budget request for the mock trial program. And I'm sorry, my document's numbered a little differently than yours, so I'm.
You understand that's the 30,000?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So the mock trial competitions that we do for our state is in your continuation budget.
It is.
And the money's from that.
This is a one-time cost for a national mock trial competition.
Okay. Chairman, we're going to take the 2 copies. You can feel free to bring the paperwork you brought, but we're going to bring the 2 copies we're working off of.
Okay,
as well.
good. That's helpful.
Because there are at least 4 versions of this. There's 2 versions of 07 and 2 versions of 08. And I want to promise the public, if they're watching that they have the same numbers in them. One is more detailed, and one is a roll-up for use by the committee. So we understand that. We're annualizing funds. Tell us real quickly, and you've done this before, but just, again, provide funds for the continuation of the citation automation project.
The citation automation project is something that we have been working on several years through a grant with the Governor's Office of Highway Safety.
Right.
There's a federal mandate coming down whereby all of the traffic citations have to be to the Department of Driver Services within 10 days, or we're going to lose federal highway money. And so the grant, we've automated a lot of those, but the grant funds have run out, and that would be money to continue that project to have the courts transmitting those citations electronically.
And if we were not to fund this item, we would lose highway funds, or the local folks would have to find a way to fund it themselves.
That is correct.
Is that not true? So this is, if you would penny wise, pound foolish if we were to take that.
That is
money
correct.
at this point.
And it helps in other ways, too. It helps us have some really good data about what's going on in the traffic courts. And we get a lot of requests, particularly from the legislature, about fines and how many tickets there are and those kinds of things when you have legislation come up. And that just helps us to have better data.
Chairman Knopf.
Well, how much money are we going to lose in highway funds if we don't do this? Do we have any
The Department
idea?
of Driver Services may know. There is a
I didn't
federal
hear the
mandate
response.
coming down through the Motor Carriers Association for those to come through, and if we have to substantially comply.
I mean,
And I don't know the
do we
dollar
think
amount.
that's hundreds of thousands or tens of millions?
How about, can we get a number on that? Can we find out what the number might be on that? If we're going to lose $1,000 of federal funds, it may not be worth spending the money. If we're going to lose $100,000, that's, another deal. I'd be interested to know what that is. Every time the feds decide to give us some kind of a, demand like that, it's, doesn't mean we should jump through the hoops unless it's going to be worth our while to do it. Some of that stuff they ask for is nonsense.
Those highway dollars go to the Department of Transportation, and I think it's approximately about $21 million. And there's a percentage of that we get imposed if there's non-compliance with
Okay,
the state.
here's but is that the same $21 million that they've threatened us with about 18 times on other stuff?
It
So
is.
we're being threatened multiple times on the same $21 million, right?
And multiple agencies, depending on what piece of the pie you support of
Right.
highway dollars.
Do you know who else is? Do you know who else is threatening us about this same $21 million?
Mainly FMCSA.
The-
I'm sorry.
Right. And the seatbelt. I mean, like the seatbelt legislation and those kind of things.
Okay.
They do use that same pot of money.
Okay, it's the same $21 million though for all this stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
Michael, you can help us with that, can't you?
Mr. Nesbitt, on lines, well, you don't have the lines, that's right. This is provide funds for a database administrator, provide fund travel for the administrative office of courts, $19,000, and 3 additional software specialist positions. How many specialist positions are there now existing? Do we know?
7.
7?
Yeah, what we'd like to do is have one software specialist per administrative district that would go out and assist the judges with the software, with the the child support calculator and those kind of things. We have 10 administrative districts.
Are the loads between the administrative districts level, even?
But
Distributed
yeah, they
or-
pretty much are. There just is a lot more space in between the courts and some of the more rural districts.
Look at as I remember, the administrative districts were set up based upon the old division of congressional districts from back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying I know those
There are
lines.
some
Those lines
districts-
have been changed.
No lines have been changed. And
Population's changed.
population has changed, and like, for example, the 7th District has the most judges. So, I mean, there are more judges there.
Do we need to do it on basis of administrative districts as a?
That's something we can certainly look at.
I mean, why not just recognize where the load is and have them work based upon load factors.
I mean, they, our intention was for those specialists to kind of work with the district court administrators to meet the needs in those administrative districts, but it could be that we do need to reshuffle, and they do all move around as needed.
Is there any need to do a reshuffling of the lines of the administrative districts, or is that something sort of?
I mean, that's something that
cemented?
Superior Court judges would need to address.
Okay. Because I know that's old lines. It's something I maybe might look at modifying someday.
The $19,000 for the travel is just the increase in the mileage rate that we need to try to make up because the mileage rate reimbursement is higher.
Well, that was the other question. Is that for these people who are the software specialists, or is that just your whole office?
That's our whole office.
Your whole office. Why was it lumped in there? I'm curious.
I don't know. We had it in our document
Okay.
separated, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Committee have any further questions? I'm going to assume the answer. I know the answer to this, but just for the record, the 3 additional software positions at $245. That's a fully loaded, salary, benefits, travel, care
Yes.
and feeding,
Yes.
startup.
Yes. We don't typically feed them, but we.
Well, it's the way we used to refer to it when we used to add people to projects is.
But that is the entire cost,
that is
including
the
the
entire
computer and all that for
cost to you.
startup. Yes.
And I know we have the child support calculator. We have new initiative running out. I mean, my only question, we talk about this further offline, is, love all our folks that work for the state. They do a good job for us. But I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves. People are the most expensive part, and oftentimes, if not all the time, the most valuable part of state government. But with the 3% COLAs that we've been able to support the last 2 years, the increased cost in medical coverage that we take on as a state, our payroll, if we had hired not a single new individual at Georgia, would have gone up 14.5% to 15%. I have to look down and add the numbers up exactly. When you take the difference between 14% of the medical costs that we did pay and the 22% we do now is 8%, and then the 6% COLA, and you remember that's compounded.
Right.
So I'm real leery, and that's one of the reasons we're setting out these new positions to review what they do. But I just question if we're not sure if we're peaking, if we're staffing for a peak or a valley, might we want to look at that being a
On the child support guidelines?
Well, I mean, just
On
the
any
software
of them?
software
Okay.
specialist. Might we want to look at an outsourcing version of that so that we didn't take on an employee that we might not have as much work for them to do in the future? I just ask sort of across the board, ask everyone to look at that as an option. Are there further questions from the Judicial Council? Further question. I know you got the same thing. You got the increase in funds, which is it's a new position, Judicial Qualifications Commission, right?
Yes.
All right. Michael, can we list those just instead of increasing funds? Let's just list that as a new position. I mean, are we? Some places we're increasing funds, and some places it says new position. I guess, yeah. Because what I'm fear is if we say increase funds, and I don't know if you have one or two or whatever there, but the way that language is, they could just take those funds and,
You want to specify that it's going to fund a position?
Yeah, because I mean, in reality, you could take that and move somebody's pay grade and keep the same people and pay them more money. I'm not suggesting you would do that, but I think it's real important if we're doing new ads that we know what we're getting for those and we can measure them. Chairman Royal's committee is going to help us after we go home to make sure that the things that we put in the budget, follow through. Aren't you, Chairman Royal? Yes, sir. Any other questions about the Judicial Council? Again, Ms. Nesbitt has been real good to work with us, and she has assured me previously in the committee today that she has offered up all the opportunity we have for saving in that council, and there are no more. Is that fair to say, Ms. Nesbitt?
Yes, and again, we did take a significant budget cut last year, so it is difficult for us to come up with anything else we can pull
Okay.
out of that.
If there's no further questions, all right. Thank you very much.
I'm going to leave these documents up here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
The next, we have juvenile courts. I was just being reminded, Ms. Burke, that we were going to be here for 2 hours, and we've been 45 minutes on three fairly simple departments. But I mean, this is good time. But I know you have. Let me flip over to the pages in our documents. We're on 6 of 18 in 2007 and 7 of 35 in 2008. Council, I'll be real quick. Does the committee have any questions regarding our 07 budget? And I'm sorry, I didn't. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do for them over there? I know the committee knows you, but
Kirsten Wallace, I'm the budget director with the Council of Juvenile Court Judges.
And Ms. Wallace, you want to tell? I mean, we talked over your budget in 07, and again, your representation to me, and I think the committee in your original presentation is all of the additional items you have are necessary in order for the juvenile courts to do what they need to do. Specifically in 7.1, you're just taking care of the pay raises across the board and the health benefits. Mileage increase went up. That is what it is.
That's correct.
And your funds for a juvenile judge in the Coweta Circuit, that position had been approved and is ours to fund it. So there were no new ads. And
That's correct.
you don't have anything in that continuation that's hiding from us. You could give.
No, I wish
you
I
could
did.
give back.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No
No
fluff. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Wallace on the FY08 budget? There again, correct me. Do you have any new ads, new positions, new programs?
No,
I don't.
we don't.
Nothing is escaping us here. Any questions in regards to this? So there's nothing left in there for you.
No.
And you have the same situation, and we haven't mentioned it, but I will here, going in 08, that you were not aware of the health increase, and we have that to deal with.
That's correct.
Within
Which
our
is an
budget.
additional $54,000, I think.
Thanks for sharing that with us today. Any more good news?
Nope.
I keep wanting to do this. Committee, I keep wanting to call you the council. Does the committee have any questions? Section 7, juvenile courts. You know where that's coming from, don't you, Chairman? Well, 6 years of sitting with my mayor and council. Any questions of the committee? If not, I think, see how easy, if you don't ask for new money, folks, how this works. If we do it for Georgia for the same, with the same or less folks, we get you out of here faster. If there are no further questions, we'll move along.
Okay, thank you.
Prosecuting attorneys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As to the 07 amended, we have no new programs nor any new positions asked for in that budget. Simply adjustments based on changes that were unanticipated to us because of the insurance cost and things of that nature. Also, we were asked to put in we were asked to put in the money for the pay raise in the supplemental budget. We requested 4%, and we understand that we have been instructed to go with a 3%, which would reduce the figure from, as you had already looked at before, from $888,000 to $691,720. That's as far as the 07 budget. There's no new programs and no new employees. As to the 08, as to the district attorneys, we were asking for $350,000 to add 10 new advocate positions in the circuit. So that would be money that creates a new program. It's $350,000. Not a new program, but new positions. Other than that, there are no new positions created, unless, of course, the legislature does add judges. And if you add judges, then that will add an assistant DA to each circuit.
Haven't put on the bill. You get those in here?
No, sir. Traditionally, we do them in the supplemental because we don't know until after the budget's already been submitted how many judgeships there will be. So it's a traditionally we put that in the supplemental budget.
I think that's something with which we'll deal. Chairman Willard, they had the two that were contemplated. I think two more were added as well, and we're discussions that I think we'll probably handle two of those. Try to handle the two of those now, perhaps two of them in supplemental budget, and that may be another one of these instances where we may list it as a new position, but I think it's pretty clear that we have to have an ADA if we create a judge. So it's one of the sort of an anomaly to the statement I made earlier with any new position. This is almost a statutory requirement. Well, I guess it is a statutory requirement. It's not almost. It is a statutory requirement. So we'll still check on them to make sure that they're keeping the judges busy, filing the proper amount of casework, I suppose. But we appreciate.
130,000 pending now. So
you think they'll have things to do? Tell me this, and I was looking back at my notes as I was going over this, and this is just something. If you don't have the information today, I do want to get it to the committee. When we were talking earlier about the pay raise and how you guys came to know when it was 4, you did 4, but you thought it was only going to get 3 later. Get tangled up in that. When was the pay raise given? When did
the pay raise was given by the council? That's a decision made by the 9 members of the prosecuting attorney's council. It had been widely reported that there was a 4% raise, and of course the budget document set up to a 4% raise. We were told, we were advised that there would be funding, and we heard it first from the Senate Budget Office that it would only be funded for 3%. We checked with the House Budget Office, and they told us they thought that was going to be the figure as well. The council, nevertheless, due to the fact that it had been widely publicized that it would be 4%, voted to make it 4%. And for us to try to find a way, ask for the money, and if not, we don't get it, try to find a way back, cutting back on something else.
When was the raise implemented?
Oh, it was January 1st with everyone else's.
It wasn't before January 1st?
No, sir.
Because I thought earlier in talking that I heard you say that it was done prior to January 1st.
The vote was taken before January 1st. I may have been confused.
Okay, that perhaps was my confusion.
The vote was taken like in November or December, perhaps.
All right, then I'm going to put you, I guess, in a little bit of a bind here this morning between you and you've been good to work with me as well. And Ms. Wallace, so did you. I forgot to, on an individual basis, if I forget, we really appreciate everybody working with us. But I'm gate my comment here. I guess I'm growing weary. There's going to be another place later on in this budget where a council of people are deciding how to act with state employees and putting us in positions where we're incurring, in my opinion, significant expense we didn't have to incur, and then we have to sit here and write the checks. With due respect to the council, and I don't know a member, couldn't name you a member by name. I apologize. I couldn't name a member. Okay, I'll pay the fine at the end of the meeting. Just make it go away. All right. That's good. I needed to stop that train of thought anyway. I don't know the members of the council, but here's the bind. Either I'm about to put you in, or they've put you in. They don't have the authority, in my opinion, and I'll yield to my learned attorneys here, to tell you that they're going to give a 4% raise and then you find it somewhere else, because that's money you could have offered back to us in the form of savings to the Georgia taxpayer. Can one of my colleagues up here tell me if that authority exists in that council, that then I have to fund it? Because where I was, everything is subject to a fine. I'll turn on your microphone.
I think what they've taken is what would be a range of saying up to 4% and said it will be 4%. And I think that went across the entire state to every department. And the word came out, as I believe from the governor's office, it's not going to be 4%, it's going to be 3%. Now, the fact that the decision was made by independent bodies to say, well, we're going to stick with 4%, I think it's contrary to what they have the authority to do.
Well, I can't speak to that as far as the authority is concerned. They do have they are designed for the authority to set the salaries and the scales and things like that, but they're all subject to appropriation. There's no question of that. So I think what we're saying is that both groups have authority. It's a question of whether they've got the money.
Appropriations.
Right. And it's got to be subject to appropriation. I would point out, if you will notice, in both the 07 and the 08, we followed to the letter the OPB's instructions on new programs and things of that nature. We did not put in a new program, as they instructed us to do, without finding funding or suggesting funding for it, or by getting prior approval. We have been in discussions with the legislature about additional positions, but we have not put those in our budget because the instructions we received were not to. And we have tried very hard and very scrupulously to follow those instructions. I will agree with you that we were instructed to give 3 and the council voted 4. And that's just a fact that I can't, that I will not deny because it's the truth. That's my answer, and
That's your story, and you're
that's
sticking
my
to
story,
it.
and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, the truth of the statement,
but
they
we
were
have-
instructed 3, they did contrary.
Followed.
I said that, yes, sir, and you asked me that question last time as well, and I gave you a one-word answer. Yes, sir, that's exactly what occurred.
Yeah, that followed by the thing, you have friends for it and friends against it, and you're for your friend.
I sort of find myself sometimes in between the two groups. There's no question of that.
You are. And my only, here's my pause with the situation we find ourselves in now. I've asked all the departments so far, and I'm going to ask you, is there anything left on the table in 07? And 1% of the salary, help me out, Michael, but the 1% adjustment when we went from 4 to 3 is $180,000. Give or take. We went from $888 to $669. So we set that correctly. Now, what I'm hearing for you is you're still paying at the council's, based on the council's vote and direction, you're paying a 4% pay raise.
Yes, sir.
And you're able to fund it, which
Yes,
means you have $180,000 more than this committee intended you to have, and yet when we went through the, we'll work on that one. It's not your fault. You're caught in the middle.
Let me ask.
But I am bothered by the process, and we'll get to it later with a bigger number that has more commas in it. I am bothered by the fact that we have continuation budgets that have that much left over in it, that this legislative body, not just this subcommittee, the full appropriations committee and the House of Representatives, along with the Senate, and the governor's concurrence in signing the budget, can send a budget, and the message is 3%. That's what's fair to the state employees. And we have some folks off someplace else that decide it's a different number, and we've left you money in your budget. You can cover it somewhere. I'm not doing my job well enough.
I see your point, and I concur with you. I will mention this. You ask, is there something in there? One of the things that's a little bit unique to our budget is that the vast majority of the money goes to salaries of people we do not employ. I don't decide what their salary is. There's a statutory formula. So if an assistant DA leaves in, say, Brunswick, the DA down there hires the best lawyer he can find at a fee that I don't set. We have to make an estimate in August, 18 months before I come here and defend that estimate, as to how much money it's going to require to do that. If you'll look at those numbers over the last several years, that we have been within 1 or 2% accurate on those guesses. We get a lot of help from your staff and from the OPB in doing that. So it is, for us, it's a fluid, it's a moving target in a lot of ways. We don't know how many vacancies we'll have and how many positions will change. That goes for secretaries, investigators, and for assistant DAs. That they are unique in that regard. I can't dictate by law to the DA, you can only hire a Class 2 assistant DA. And so we don't control the spending, we just control the budgeting. And we try to do our best. And if you'll look, our numbers are within 1 or 2% of accurate almost every year. It does require adjustment almost every year for that reason. Now, that being said, I've judged this at this point in time, and I've been doing a lot of work in the last 2 or 3 weeks looking at expenditures versus need. And I believe that that your reduction that you suggested in the earlier supplemental budget, where you reduced it from 1.4 million for the thing, is an appropriate adjustment down. I think that we're not going to be needing that 1.4 million. We're going to need about half of that or less to do it. So there's an answer I can give you that I think that I believe that we have, because of an anticipated shortfall without the supplemental budget, we have left positions open. I have a member of my staff that was appointed to the parole board, as you know. I no longer pay him. And I've had senior attorneys. I have several attorneys that are no longer employed, and I haven't filled those positions. So it's a fluid target, especially for us. And so I think there is some room for reductions from our 07 supplemental request that was made in August. And you have identified some of those, and I think that I've also discussed this with the Senate, that there are some of these numbers based on our expenditures that we could lower.
Have you discussed a number with the Senate less than the 100? Because you said you could do it with half or less. Have you discussed a number of less than $711,000 with the Senate?
No, sir. Of less than that?
Well,
I've had the same discussion with the Senate.
In your statement, you said you could do it for half or less.
Well,
and you followed that up with you've had discussions with the Senate. I just want to ensure that you haven't led this committee to believe one thing and shared other information with the Senate.
I'll be happy to share all the information with everyone. And what I mean by that is the figures on there is a dispute between the House Budget Office and the Senate Budget Office as to what occurred last year as it relates to the veto. The veto has been the 800-pound gorilla in our budget process for the last 4 years. Last year, the Senate House put in a certain amount of money to be appropriated to cover the veto that wasn't in our base, and the Senate put in the identical amount of money, but you put it in different budgets. One put it in the House budget, in the PAC budget. One put it in the District Attorney's budget. It doesn't help us if it's in the DA's budget. The conference committee, I am told, that it was agreed that it be put in the PAC budget where it should be, but in effect, the document came out putting it in the District Attorney's budget. When we get this, these numbers start off and they change dramatically. That figure was allegedly $890,000 that was put in, should have been on one budget, wasn't and was in the other one. That's as confusing to us as it is to you, because that isn't our number. That isn't your number, and it isn't the Senate's number. It is the final number. And until you expend funds for several months, it's hard to identify if there's going to be surplus in there. And we're looking at it every day, almost, every time a pay period goes by. And so I can say that, and that's what I'm saying to you, is just as I've said to them, we are in need of funds, especially on the PAC side, the Prosecuting Attorney's Council side, due to the fact that the money that was originally to be set off for the veto was put into the District Attorney's budget rather than in the Prosecuting Attorney's County's budget. That means that some of that money is available in the District Attorney's budget. So the $711,000 we're talking about that you had already talked about as far as the offsetting that 2006 veto to be put in my view, can be taken from the District Attorney's side, a reduction from their amount of money. So what I'm saying is, if $700,000 were taken out of the request now, not the bottom line, not what was appropriated originally, but out of the subsequent request for the district attorneys and put into the Prosecuting Attorney's Council, that's the funds, I think, that would straighten all of this mess out, and we wouldn't be having this discussion every time we have a budget meeting.
It's that one point.
Just, if I might, Chairman Knox had his light on there as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, just speaking as only one member of the committee.
Yes, sir.
As I sit here and listen to this discussion, I've been listening. This isn't the first time I've heard these before. But, what concerns me about this whole issue, particularly this part of the budget, is that, I'm not sure why we should be sitting up here discovering these problems and discovering these solutions. You're the one that's closest to this issue. And I would be hoping that we would have gotten the explanation about all this before we started considering this, that you'd be bringing to us the budget and the problems with the budget rather than us having to discover it and transmitting that back to you and saying, you need to cut this, you need to cut that, why are we doing this, why are we doing that? You're the expert on this budget, and so when I get real concerned when I find out, well, there's a problem with this, and really it's over in the district attorney's budget, and that's why we can cut this, we should have known that. We shouldn't have to find that out and get this explanation by hindsight. Wait, let me finish. So my point to you is, and to anybody else that's on these budgets is, come with the real deal, and don't let us find this stuff out. If you're running a business, what the boss always tells you is, I can handle anything as long as I know what it is. Come and tell me. Don't let me get blindsided. So that's basically my request to y'all is that you don't let us be blindsided. Don't let us have to find these things out for you.
Well, Chairman Knox, I would say this, that the issue of where the money was placed. Now, you must understand, we submitted this budget back in August. It's been some period of time that we had to make this request, and we became aware that the funding was placed in the district attorneys rather than in the prosecuting attorney's counsel office during the budget hearing process, and I have just reported it to you. I think I am bringing it to you. I'm bringing it to you when I found out about it. I've sat down with budget analysts on both houses and discussed this, and I am bringing it to your attention. I think I agree with you that it should be that way. Our budget has been a subject of great scrutiny and concern since the veto came along a few years ago. We've done a number of things to try to stabilize the budget situation, including not asking for any enhancement items, to stabilize it and find out and get it square and be able to tell you exactly what funds we are going to need for the operation of the DA's offices, and not a dime more nor a dime less. And that is my goal, and I hope that you understand that I have been as forthcoming with that as I can be. There are those that didn't want me to say that there's money, I think, available in the DA's budget. And
right there, who are those?
Council members and DAs and people of that nature.
Can we invite them into chat?
Might be good to. Beth, follow up on that?
Yeah, I interrupted the gentleman, and I apologize for doing that. But when you say those of you, you shouldn't.
They don't necessarily agree with me.
Well, I understand that, but you shouldn't be put in this position. You should not be. On our part, it's our job to watch the money. You're put in a tight position between the council, the folks that that you work with, and they shouldn't put you in that position. But I'm real uncomfortable all of a sudden with where we're at, and especially with some other things that have popped up in the last couple of days with non-elected councils making calls and obligating the Georgia taxpayer. I interrupted you. You have something else you need to finish?
Well, first of all, our
Yes,
council is elected. All of the members are elected officials. There's 6 district attorneys and no, sir, but they are elected officials. I'm just saying that we are diligently trying to work to clarify what's done. Sometimes we're not included in this. We're not on the conference committee between the House and the Senate, and we don't know what the discussion is. We just get a number at the end and have to make the best of that, and we do the best we can.
I'm going to interrupt again and say you're not on the conference committee. I'm not either. Mm-hmm. But those are all public meetings, and bless the hearts for those departments that sit out there. There's some people that sit out there for 19 and 20 hours a day to be there when those are going on. And I actually, one of the budget folks from a different department, I think they live here during the conference committee because they will not let those 6 members or a subset thereof get together and have discussions for fear something's going to go on in their budget that they're not going to know about.
Ours is one of those people that sit there.
Then they should have known that the $800,000 was in there, and I should have known that you're asking for 1.4 as if that was restoring the veto, but you already had $800,000 from the year before. But we'll deal with that.
No, sir. I didn't. If I said it that way, then I said it in error. The conference committee reached one resolution, and then a Scribner's error is what we're assuming. Put it in the wrong one.
But you had $800,000.
Yes, sir.
Of the veto money.
Out of $46 million, yes, sir.
But you had 800,000, and nobody represented to me, and I've heard a lot of numbers from different places, and we can talk about this offline with Michael and any committee members that wish to be. I just don't want to take the committee's time. I'm not trying to close down or make private the discussion. I just don't want to waste the committee's time with it. But I want to understand why we're on March 22nd, and we're finding out more about this. Chairman Weller, did you have something?
I do, and I want to ask if you could, the $800,000, as you say, it was misappropriated as far as a budget, and we maintain separate district attorney budget and PAC budgets. Is the money still there, unused in the district attorney's budget?
There is $15,370,000 left in the district attorney's budget. The need is about $15,900,000. We're very close to being able to pay our personnel for the rest of the year if we get some of these funds. So, no, the money isn't there, but the money isn't there because of the increase in the health insurance premiums and things of that nature. And if you'll notice, that is $800,000. And so that money has been absorbed in the raises and has been absorbed in the additional costs that we were not aware of or not told of, nor was the legislature for that matter. And so the money is not. It has been expended for the purposes that it was intended, but
you asked for appropriation of those funds.
We asked for them
to replace the $800,000.
Yes, sir.
So if we appropriate, which the budget calls for, appropriating those funds to replace it, do we need to do a line item making a transfer of that $800,000?
That would be my suggestion.
That's what we need to do.
That's what I think, because it would clear
up
the
annualizer.
Has
it been asked for as a part of your budget presentation?
Yes, sir. It is on the Prosecuting Attorney's Council. It's 8.2.2.
8.2.2. Annualized funding. This calls about annualized funding as a result of fiscal year 2006 veto.
Yes, sir.
And that amount is $1,422,000.
That's the amount that was suggested in August of 2006, yes, sir. But I'm telling you now that it's not.
$800,000 is included with that. And is it coming out of the district attorney's budget?
Yes, sir.
Where?
No, it's not up there now because the money has been expended for the 2% increase.
But you're going back in the circle. You've asked for that to be budgeted back in on 07, which we're doing.
Yes,
that $800,000 you're talking
yes,
about.
Sir.
So does the $800,000 just disappear as a part of the budget process when you ask for it? You're saying you asked for a line item transfer, and I don't see it coming out of the district attorney's budget to go into prosecuting because it was misappropriated.
No, sir. It doesn't say it that way. No, sir.
Well, where did it come out of district attorney's budget then? Let me put that away.
It has been expended to cover the cost of the additional insurance premiums and.
That's what you asked for, though.
Yes, sir. But we asked for this in August. We didn't know this was going to happen in March.
I'm saying now, in the 0800 budget, we've already passed the 07, possibly. but I'm saying at some point, we were drawing up these figures. You've asked for it, you've been given it, and now you're saying there's a transfer, but all I see is just annualized funding for the 06 veto, but nowhere do I see the $800,000 being a reduction out or a transfer of funds out of DAs to the PAC, which is, I think, the appropriate way to handle it. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, sir. I agree with you that it is,
right.
But we didn't prepare this document. It was prepared in January based on a proposal of August. I mean, that's what I'm a little bit not disturbed, but a little bit concerned. I'm bringing this to your attention.
Right.
That's what I'm doing right now. It's not like this is some sort of shell game or something.
I see that.
And I'm bringing this to your attention. I have had discussions. I don't think the House Budget Office agrees with the Senate Budget Office that the money is in the DA budget. This is a dispute that they've been having, and I'm trying to figure it out so we can tell you the truth of it.
We do have to move on, and as I told some of the departments when they came in last week, primarily the judicial branch, about that 08 health care, we talked about 3-member subcommittees of this committee that we were going to get together to work. That didn't make any sense with the last week we had on the off week with all the members of the committee working in judiciary and the hard work they were doing. Then it just wasn't time. But those 3-member subcommittees are going to work going forward, and we're probably over the next day or so going to activate the one that's on this issue so we can help help with that. We appreciate you bringing this. The only thing I want to do before we move forward is my understanding and the representation that was made to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the $1.4 million and change was what was in play during the conference discussions last year. Is that true?
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
figured that we submitted was $1.4 million.
For the last year's budget.
For the 2007 budget, yes.
Right, and that's what was in conference committee. And my understanding, my representation prior to today was that money didn't make it in the budget.
That's what I thought
Okay.
when I made that representation.
And fair enough. Okay, based on new information, 800,000 of it did go in the budget in the wrong place, if you will. But we still requested the full 1.4 at mid-year.
That's correct.
And let me. It seems odd to me that well, I guess it's not odd. It's no wonder y'all so easily agreed to getting half of the original request, because 700,000, 800,000 is 1.5 million, and you only lost 1.4 million. We're going to need to talk about this some
Let
more.
me make one more observation of which you may not be aware. We didn't submit this as two separate budgets. We submitted as one, and it was the Senate Budget Office has split it into two. And it makes it very difficult to work with three different budget offices that want to tuck it apart and put it back together in different ways. And that is part of the problem. And
The solution, and I'm going
we'll be
to
glad to
cut us
sit down
off a
and
minute.
do
We're going to do that. But one budget office, three budget offices. What I'm hearing here is there was 1.4 million in play last year.
Yes.
And we got 2.3 million in play now. And today, 4 days after we voted the budget out, is the first time that I heard we had the 800,000. I'm not a happy man. It doesn't matter. We're going to get happy again. I promise. I'm not being lied about that. Stuff happens. I appreciate knowing it today is better than me finding out from the Senate next week. Especially if it was their budget office that split it up and got us confused.
Well,
and I wouldn't
they
represent that was the case now. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking about that.
They say it's yours.
No, I understand. We're going to work with you, but we are going to want to have discussions.
I'd love to
make
get
sure.
out of the middle of the budget offices.
Well, we're going to try to help you with that. And I tell you, the other thing we're going to try to help you with, too, that was really the thing I'm most interested in is if you can, make your payroll and finish the year, you're going outside legislative intent with a 4% raise that I'm uncomfortable with, and I'm uncomfortable with, and I understand your members are elected. I just mean they're not elected for that specific duty, but they are statutorily bound, I guess, to do that. So we're going to get to that. I appreciate it. And again, apologize to you for you're kind of in the middle of this. That's what they pay you the big bucks for.
That's my job.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We'll move right along now. Superior Courts. If Ms. Chambers, would you come and clear this for a second? Just Superior Courts, just walk there and ask a question. I'll be right back.
Hello.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it.
As I understand it, this is a question time. Do you all want to ask questions?
Well, we will look and see if the committee has any questions right now. Looks like Chairman Willard will.
Well, I think what was going on earlier, Madam Chair, is that they were asking for what may be...
Press your button, please, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
They were asking earlier what may be the staff increases, contract increases that may be affecting the budget. First looking at 06 as an issue, whether we got anything there that may...
06?
I'm sorry, 07, sorry. I'm moving fast. Anything there that we've looked at before that say, well, we know what's happening as far as a re-review of this. Do we have anything there that first needs to be examined, perhaps coming out, and then doing the same thing with the 08 budget? So as to 07,
All right.
Judge, do you have anything there that we can look at as saying, this is something we need to put off because we're talking about a supplemental budget?
Well,
emergency needs.
The House committee, I believe, recommended $1.5 million for some security hardware needs in the 07 amended.
Right.
We requested it in 08. So I guess I would have to say candidly that we feel like we could do that in 08.
Yes.
We also feel like we can do it in 07.
Yes, sir.
But that's the first answer I would give for 07.
In fact, being appropriated now, Judge, is likely that wouldn't get used until 08 budget anyway, time-wise.
Well, it might not, but and this is a one-time
Right.
thing. Although we've got the needs are about $3 million if we brought each county up to speed, and so we do think that money, assuming they would, because we would have to have a commitment on the part of the counties to fund a position to man these things. Now, in my county, for a while, we had an unmanned metal detector, and I told everybody as a joke we were operating on the honor system, but
Right.
we would have to get that commitment. Now, that may take into 08.
Well, I remember following this process through the council. Actually, what they're looking at is about $15,000 per county is what it was kind of, I say, there wasn't really describing or defining a specific use allocation of the funds. It's just saying, let's see about what the legislature told us to do. Let's put $15,000 roughly per county.
Right. As you know,
And
our council and the sheriffs have collaborated on a security plan, and part of the what that calls for is to have an X-ray machine, to have a stun belt for your county, and this would satisfy those hardware needs, because we were looking at, actually, I think it's about $10,000 for the counties,
Right.
10 to 15,
yeah.
and realizing that some of our larger metro counties perhaps would already have these things in place.
Okay.
And in fact, we have looked at doing that with Tier 1 counties being dealt with first, and Tier 2 counties dealt with second. And I've been told by my folks, you say Tier 1, Tier 2, they'll know what you're talking about. It's not necessary that you know what you're talking about. So,
Thank you, Judge.
all right.
Chairman Knott.
I'm going to pass. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee have any further questions? Mr. Chambers, were we looking at both the 07 and 08? I guess
We
it's,
certainly
we were.
can, Mr. Chair.
Well, I didn't know if
We've got them here, we might as well take advantage.
well, no, I mean, we have been doing that. I just didn't know if we had asked the committee for each, for questions on the 08. This would be the time for questions on the 07 and 08. And we would do the same thing that we talked before. We're going to note the new programs you have within the budget. Yes, sir.
Judge, on this courthouse security, I've asked you about this before, and I tend not to give up on things easily. So, are we going to have a request for courthouse security funds each budget year now?
No, sir, we don't anticipate. We anticipate that as a one-time expense because we envision it being used to purchase an X-ray machine. Now, they last longer than a year, so we don't anticipate having to replace those.
Well, for instance, around my county, I know we've had more than one X-ray machine installed in the courthouse. You know, and of course the county's paying for that because it's our courthouse. It's the county's courthouse, and the sheriff has constitutional duty to provide security, and that sort of thing. So, and we've had, we have security plans and so on, but. They have a new machine that you can install about every 6 months. They're like computers anymore. I think that you've got the latest and greatest technology to find things with. I just want to be sure we're not getting ourselves into the mode that every time somebody wants a new X-ray machine, we're not going to be stuck for having to come up with state funds for a county function.
No, we don't anticipate this being an ongoing thing. We still have like 35 counties that don't have any security at all. And those would be where we would address these needs first. Sure, technology is going to change, and X-ray machines are going to be improved. Stun belts will be improved, but we don't envision coming back like we have to do for computers and ask the state to fund those upgrades.
Wouldn't this be more? Shouldn't this be under the sheriff's budget instead of under the Superior Court judge's budget?
Somebody ought to do it, and nobody's done it for 35 counties, and that's is why we have brought this to the state.
Well, is it possible those 35 counties don't have any security problems or needs?
Well, perhaps they hadn't had any yet, and they may not have any.
I guess what I'm getting at, where's this request coming from?
The request is coming out of the work that the judges and the sheriffs did in developing the security plans that I think Senate Bill, what's the number, 452, that required made the sheriffs responsible for security in the courthouses, and part of the recommendations that we have is for each county to have these pieces of hardware.
I guess my question is, why aren't they saying we can't afford this, will you give us the money, instead of the Superior Court judges having to come here and ask for it?
Well, they have it. We don't really care who gets the credit for it. We just think that folks ought to be as safe as they can when they go to the courthouse, and we wanted to put it on the table. We think it's a need that we know it's a need. Because like we say, there's 35 counties that don't have anything. You just walk right in. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just follow up. And I know I'm not. I want the courtrooms to be secure, but I'm not sure this is exactly the right manner. We should find it, because I'm concerned. Does this do all 35 of those courtrooms?
It would address, yes, those 35. We wouldn't have a courtroom that didn't have something.
So you think this amount of money gives every courtroom every?
No, it would not give every courtroom each of these items.
No, but I mean, what I'm getting at is, does this secure the courtrooms so that when the last dollar runs out of this money, that the next fellow in line wouldn't think that they're still unsecure and hadn't been taken care of? That's my worry with it, that we've decided here that there are some people that haven't gotten there. We're going to help them get there, but the guy in line, when the money runs out, the next guy in line will invariably be the person that has the incident.
I believe that these funds would mean that we wouldn't have any counties that would have no security devices.
And they're getting to decide what they think within the reasonable budget. They're getting to decide what we're not telling them what they think they need.
The sheriff and the commissioners necessarily will have to be involved in this, because these items really don't work unless there's somebody who is trained to operate them. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not so much worried about providing the money as I am about how it gets dispensed, and that there is that buy-in. Because if we buy the metal, if there's a metal detector that's at the door and they don't man it or operate it properly, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, we've all been through. I've been in city council chambers around Georgia, city halls, which are the courthouses in some cases, where they have a metal detector, and you walk through and it beeps, and there's nobody there to tell you to stop.
We had one in
walk right on in.
I believe while you had stepped out, we have had one in my home circuit for a number of years, and it would beep. And I told the jurors when they had questioned me about it, I said, well, we're on the honor system. You lay your gun down. If you hear it beep, and you pick it up on the way out. It makes a good joke, but it wouldn't have been too funny if something had happened. Right. Fortunately, nothing has happened. But,
yes, sir. All right. Are there further questions? Yes, sir.
One last thing, Judge. We've got a line item for 10 new law assistant positions. Are those for what you created judgeships, or can you tell us where those are going?
Yes, sir. They would. We have 65 state-funded law clerk positions in the state, and we have 197 Superior Court judges.
Okay.
And this would, I think, would go to one per district. Is I think how we would divide that up.
And You brought up something I asked earlier. You heard me talk about the district lines. Is that something that needs to be modified?
Well, I'll tell you that we do a lot of things on a per judge basis as opposed to a per district basis. And I'll say that the judges have never questioned that. So we do address, if there are funds that we decide to distribute, we do it on a per judge basis. And it's quite expensive, as you know, to create an additional judicial district.
Well, look at create a new one, just rearrange the lines to make it more in line with what its population shifts over the last 30 years.
Well, you know how lawyers are about changing things. Judges are about the same way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But my district
They
has...
were that at one time, weren't they?
The 7th District has 33 judges, which is the most of any in the state.
Yeah.
And so I suppose we're the ones that would holler. Now, our district court administrator, who's here today to defend herself, has told us from time to time, now, you all may qualify for additional judgeships, but 33 is all I can put up with. So, you know, she's not looking for any more, but...
we'll keep that in mind.
Wise beyond her years. Yes. But she has to put up with us quite often.
I don't see any more questions. I just, in the 08, just from my standpoint, there's a couple lines in there we may want to talk to you about. I'm going to be slow to annualize funds for temporary labor. If it's temporary by definition, I'm not sure we want to analyze it.
One time.
Well, then we need to reflect that in there as one time.
It is one time, and we. Perhaps I didn't make that clear, but that's a one-time item.
And we'll take care. I just mean that to looking down at some things. We may give you a call about a couple of lines in 08, but we'll do that. Any further questions? I'm going to try to move us along here, yes,
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to sit down without again telling you that our secretaries need the pay adjustment that we have discussed that I believe was not recommended.
Y'all don't have a council like the previous folks that just gives it to them whether we fund it.
No, sir. They need a pay adjustment, and they're real interested in our efforts on their behalf.
Yes, sir.
I want it to be clear in front of all this assemblage that I have in fact emphasized.
Yes,
that.
sir. You have. You can safely go back to amongst them and and tell them that you. No, in all seriousness, we told you what we were doing at the 07. We didn't think that was the proper place to have that discussion in the middle because it had been worked out in Congress, and we told you we were going to work with you to try to get something.
We've assured them that
yes,
you
sir.
said that you didn't think it lacked merit, so.
Yes, sir.
For them to take comfort in that.
And we appreciate the fact that y'all let us be involved in the decision.
Did like merit.
Yes, sir. Any further questions? I don't know what the...
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have the Supreme Court's coming up next, and I don't know what kind of chance we have at getting all this done by 1 o'clock. I had no idea. I appreciate all the information, but we're going to go as quickly as possible.
Chairman, I hear the Supreme Court really didn't have any enhancements. It was just the increase in health insurance and the GBA rentals and the cost of living, and their cost of living was the same as the rest of the judicial branch. The elected officials got the 2.89.
Yeah, I can concur with that. I think in the 07 budget, they're just providing sort of for the statewide increases that we had talked about earlier, and even in the 08 budget.
And in the 08 as well.
We're annualizing those. So you'll see some changes in the annualizers because we've adjusted
because
the 4 to 3.
3 to 4. Mm-hmm.
But there are no new programs.
Very simple.
Any of the learned attorneys on the council feel like they want to question the Supreme Court?
Just one thing I want to ask about, and that was, again, going back to the Office of Dispute Resolution.
Yes, sir.
We changed that out from the budget of the Supreme Court into the budget of AOC.
Of the Judicial Council. It's not AOC proper. It's in the Judicial Council.
Was it? Okay.
And one of the reasons they did that is when Fletcher came on as Chief Justice, there were a lot of commissions and programs that were kind of freestanding commissions and programs that had a lot of autonomy under the Supreme Court, and he wanted to see that better streamlined and to streamline the administration of those projects and programs. And as a part of that, he put the budgetary and administrative functions under the Judicial Council. Gotcha. So in order to streamline that and make them all more accountable and their funding streams be the same. So it was not that they kicked them out of the Supreme Court. They did that to streamline the administrative process, and that's something that the legislature directed us to do for several years.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think several of these lawyers have questions of the Supreme Court. They're just not going to ask them. I think we're clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See, this was easier than that other one.
Yeah, it is.
It's a smaller group of people with which to deal. Department of Defense. While you're coming up, let me poll the council here. Let me, at the risk of making some people happy and some people sad, I had no idea, and I think this is a good thing that we've been in here this long, but I had no idea that we were going to have this kind of a good and positive, productive conversational dialogue. So I thought we'd get everybody in 2 hours. It's clear to me now that that is not going to be the case. I probably should have noticed that some time ago. We would like, the committee would like, if we could, to allow public defenders and corrections. I think those are two items that may have some discussion to delay, and we'll have you guys back on Monday. We'll let you know this afternoon. And I apologize. You've been good to sit with us. We thought we'd get through. But in the efforts to get through some of the smaller departments, if you will, smaller but no less important, we're going to let you guys go for the afternoon, and we'll try to get through the rest of the departments before we break at 1 o'clock. So, again, I apologize. Thank you for your time. I know it's valuable, and apologize for you guys being here. But if you take away, no kind of the conversation we're going to have, because y'all do have the bigger budgets and some things to think about, discuss with us. Thank you very much. Department of Defense. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Mike Fowler, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Defense. We have no enhancements in our 07 budget. I would welcome any questions about 07.
I think we're good.
Good. 08, would you prefer to deal with questions, or are we going to address the three programs that are in there?
Let me just ask again, in the interest of time, does the committee have questions with the enhancements? Again, I would say
19.25, 26, and 3.5.
They're on page 19 of 35, Chairman Willer.
Maybe.
Why, you just highlight the new programs real quickly. I mean, or I can.
Yes.
It's 1925, 1926, and 1935. Are they not?
Yes, sir.
Those are the three programs to provide funding, and we've addressed this, that this is the maximum number they can really put into use to draw down the federal monies in
right. We have federal program. Federal money is programmed against these dollars. The 19.25 is a 50-50 match. It's for the parking lots and the exteriors to the armories that have been renovated to finish that project up, get rid of the cracks in the parking lots, and finish up the environmental problems in the on the grounds. It's a 4-year. Actually, no. The 25 is the maintenance program. This is a second of a 4-phase to put in place a maintenance program to maintain the 80-odd armories around the state. 2.6 is 3-to-1 federal dollars. There's $1.5 million of federal dollars programmed to go against the 500,000 state to do the parking lots and the grounds, and it is a 4-year phase plan to do all the armories across the state. And then the 3.5 is the increase in the size of the Youth Challenge program in Augusta. That was originally designed to be a 200-bed per session campus. It was funded at 100-bed because of the federal lack of funds at the time. The state did step up and was going to fund the full academy. At that time, the feds have another $15 million going into the program this year, and we're first in line to increase it. And this is the state dollars we need to lay claim to those dollars to increase that program, and that'll make it a much more
efficient program in operation. It's really sub-sized to be as efficient as we'd like it right this second. This will bring it to the same size as the Fort Stewart campus, which many of you may have seen.
Good program.
Any questions, any of these? I think if there are changes to be made, we'll certainly look at how we can reprogram federal dollars, or if it's possible.
And I think we let the last person out without me asking this question. But the 07, you had no changes.
No change at all.
You don't have anything that you could have done without in the 07, any kind of a reduction that we didn't hear about, did you?
We support the governor's requests on 07. No requests, sir.
I understand. You didn't have any requests.
Yes, sir.
The question is, do you have any funds in there that you could have done without?
Done without? No.
Okay. Well, it's not a trick question. I'm not going to be accused of.
We're going to be lucky to make it, sir.
Well, just wanted to hear that. And again, no trick question involved there. We just asked the other people, is there anything we had missed? And I think we let the Supreme Court out of here without asking them that question. But I'll find Ms. Nesbitt later if she's not here. I know where she resides, at least from a state perspective. So there's nothing else in 07. There was nothing there that you could have done. You couldn't have done any of these new programs without the new funding.
No, sir. And I think you'll look that ours is probably the most leveraged of all the budgets. We have basically programmed federal dollars and match requirements, so we've very difficult for us to change course in midstream anyway.
Very well.
Thank you.
There are no further questions. Thank you very much. It was also, please, you can. We're good.
Yes, sir.
It was also known to me that the GBI the director was out of town, and since we're going to come back on Monday, if you would like to do that as well. We again apologize for you having to be here with us today, but we're glad you were here. It means a lot to us, and it'd be fine if you guys would want to line back up with us on Monday. Thank you very much. So we'll excuse you guys as well. The next item we have, or the next department we have, Department of Driver Services.
Good afternoon. Commissioner Dozier was not able to attend. He was chairing a Drivers Education Commission meeting, so.
He wasn't on Capitol Hill today.
No, sir, he wasn't.
All righty. We appreciate you. We understand you. I don't mean anything. We do appreciate you being here. We understand that it was quick notice, and understand he has other duties.
Yes, sir.
07. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to guide us through here. There was an addition made later because of a matching funds that you had available down in Glade County. Is that a project that you guys are okay and have within your ability to construct?
Yes, sir. It was in our initial request, was for the facilities to partnership with, and that was one of them.
Okay, so this was one that just didn't make it through the governor's recommendation, if you will. And
yes,
that's something that I ask you all the departments to share with us your request, and that's what I wanted you to share with the committee, that it wasn't a request and you do have it within your plans to go there.
Yes,
that was the only addition to the 07 budget from the committee from the House. Again, you have the license issuance feasibility study that I believe you had relayed to me that some of that's going to be a study, and some of that you may be able to do the study a little bit less and take the project further with that $600,000 than you initially thought.
We have the IV&V project for the driver's license that has already been awarded.
Right. So there's nothing in that. Same question, not a trick question, but there's nothing in there that you could do without.
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on, and again, committee have any questions on 07? Y'all like it better when you're down at the end of the agenda, and we're trying to move on. I'm going to draw lots to see who can be last. Truly, the last shall be first.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all are doing a good job. There's plenty of time for birthday.
Absolutely.
Tell us about the new things you have going on in 08.
A lot of that in 08 is basically the ongoing cost that is associated with the one-time cost from the 07 budget.
Right.
It's the facilities, as well as, which is the positions that go with those facilities, It's also for the Georgia Secure ID initiative. That's a partnership with ourselves and GBI and the INS. Then there's also a reduction that was from the previous budget where we had initial monies for 2 facilities that we'll be moving forward with, and they're to be opening soon. One has already opened. Also, the other one is for the electronic document imaging system, and that's for us to move from the antiquated microfilm to a digital system. And then another one was to enhance the contact center with 14 positions due to the call volume to our centers, and to try to move towards 85% of answering those calls within a certain period of time.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? What an excellent explanation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have juvenile justice.
Sorry, that was a quick one.
Just when she gets all settled.
Next time I'll sit next to you, Mr. Chairman.
While juvenile justice is coming up, I did want to mention the same thing we're going to do, just so the commissioner doesn't get break out in hives or whatever. These additional investigators, and I know they're part of the governor's program, and we'll make sure his folks understand. But we're going to ask next year when you come back with those positions as well. What did the state? Did they work for the state of Georgia? That's no disrespect to the governor and his position or the commissioner, but that's just one of the things that we want to take as we go forward. So those things, we're going to ask you how we did with the implementation of the electronic document. That's a big number, and I know you guys think you need it. We're going to ask you what the 2.8 got for us, as well as how we did on the 14 positions for the customer contact. Great. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Glad to represent DJJ. The commissioner sends his regrets. He is having our board meeting today and is having to handle those issues. I don't know how you want me to start. If you want me to just answer questions. Or
Committee members, we're on 15 of 18 for the 07 document. We're going to be 26 of 35 for the 08 document. Is there any perfunctory question here? Did you guys have anything in 07 that we didn't hear about that we should have heard about? Later better information that we ought to know about today?
No, sir. I think
relative to all the savings I'm sure you're going to be able to find.
No, I think you've heard all there is. And I know one of the questions was, do we need the things that are in the 07 amended, or could they wait? And based on our request, the major two items are the continuation of that contract at Savannah River, which without those funds we closed down April 1st, and utilities, which we've discussed earlier as something we need to do. This can't wait.
And I think you guys understand this. There's been some discussion. I'm going to get long-winded about it, about the budget, being a little bit longer this year to come out than normal. Regardless of when this budget had passed, the governor typically does not sign the budget until somewhere along 30 or 40 days. He has till 40 days after the last day of the legislative session. Things are going over. Our governor has line item veto, and he will occasionally use that. So I think you understand, and for those out there in the media or perhaps in a courtroom in Fulton County that doesn't, the budget is not going to be available any later this year than it would have been had we not been dealing with peach care issues and working to make sure Georgia's children are taken care of. And it's not directly related to that. And I only mention that because you talk about the funding for this facility April 1st. I think you guys knew it was coming. The money was not going to be checked off and available April 1st, but you understand the process, and we appreciate the fact that y'all have worked with us in good faith. And that's not to say the other department hasn't. Other departments have not. It's just some of those out there think that they can somehow change the whole budget process in the state. Right. Now, earlier, it appears we found something and somebody's talked to the Senate. You hadn't been over there telling those senators anything you hadn't told us.
Absolutely
okay.
not.
No, I'm just joking with you. Does the committee have any questions in regards to their 07 budget?
One question.
Yes, sir.
Line 30.2.1 provide funding to the Peach State Wraparound Initiative.
Yes, sir.
And that was not something governors asked for, but it's coming through the House version.
That's correct. It's added in the House. Actually, the total cost of that program is $3 million. And that's what we thought the number was going to end up being in the House version, but for whatever reason, it ended up being 2.
If it's not appropriate, what happens?
The program that exists now is funded by a SAMHSA grant that runs out, I believe, at the end of June. This program provides services in the northwest region of the state in a multiple county area through a consortium. It's in Rockdale County, Newton County, Chatham County, a little bit of services in Gwinnett and Fulton. This is a collaborative, really the only true collaborative that's happening in the state. It's a systems of care kind of model, the only one we have in Georgia that puts together DFACS, mental health, DJJ, the courts, the public schools, and it's just absolutely the way to go with providing services to severely emotionally disturbed children, keeping them in their homes and communities. And what happens is, without this money, that ends, and it's just been such a great success.
Why did the governor not see the need?
I think he did. As a matter of fact, the OPB is on the actual steering committee for the state. I think that there was some kind of issue relative to, I can't explain it. I think they wanted to fund it, but it just somehow did not get funded. They support the program and the system. I think it was an oversight. I think there was some mix-up in when they needed the money, and they thought they could wait until 2008, and they really needed it to happen in 2007. Something like that was the explanation. We're really just, to be honest with you, we're just a partner in that whole thing. We just happen to have a contract in place where we could encumber this money and move forward.
Chairman Knox. Mr. Chairman. I'm looking. Are we still on 207? Okay.
Wherever we want to be.
I'm looking at 207 and 208, and on 207 we have at 30.4.1 we're talking about funds for the Savannah River Challenge YDC facility, and then over in 2008 we're talking about a realigning program funds to associate expenditures with program activities and transfer from secure commitment program. What does that mean? What are we doing with? Are we cutting the budget for secure commitment?
Are you looking at 30?
I'm looking at 30.4.5
and then 30.0.5.
Yeah.
Yes, they're not connected. 30.0.5 is. I'm going to have to look at the House document. I'll have to look at my document to see.
Well, the reason I'm asking it, if you look down at 30.4.14 in the 2008 budget, we have the same money there as we did in 2007. And I'm not a budget expert, even though I'm on this committee. But what I'm trying to get at is this: I've been hearing from juvenile court judges that we don't have the ability to provide short-term confinement for juvenile offenders. That they're somewhat impaired in their ability to commit offenders to short-term in particular. I'm talking.
Right.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
okay.
I think I explained what this item is now. I was a little.
Right.
The language didn't just tell it to me.
Okay.
What this item is money from a number of places in our budget to fund the shift of a function called assessment and orientation. Assessment and orientation services had been provided in a disjointed way between the central office and administration and the facilities. And what we're doing is trying to collapse those responsibilities under our behavioral health unit in the central office, who can then supervise those activities at the facility instead of the money being split out in two different places. So it's really just shuffling the money around to do the same, or actually improve the process that we have in place. It's not really taking money from the facilities and putting it anywhere else. It's just they were in separate programs, so we had to shuffle that money around. We're not doing anything new or anything different other than we hopefully will be doing it better by having it all consolidated into one program. So it's not as if we've found some money in secure facilities and decided to spend it on a new function. It's the same function.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who's up?
Department of Law.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Attorney General's in Chicago today and couldn't be here, but you all heard from him just last week. I don't think anything has changed since then.
Okay, please, I'm sorry. Did we interrupt you?
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure. We were going to I think the 07 budget is fairly self-explanatory. That's the budget and expense that has been incurred and the legislature knew was coming. So we have that in there. The 08 budget really, except annualizers and to reflect the increase in workman's comp things, if you will, that are outside your control. You have two items. You have rent and then the additional attorneys, paralegals, and secretaries. And were you here at the beginning when we talked about how we want to sort of characterize these new positions?
Yes.
We were going to characterize those too. I feel sure you guys will be able to show us the need, and not to ask you for this, but my guess is you may, if you show a good result on the SAG funds going down or not increasing as much with these attorneys, probably could make a good case for additional opportunity next year. But we're going to list those that way. Please pass along to the Attorney General, and I'd be happy to come and talk to him or to understand that we're just putting everybody in that category and then treating everybody fairly. Not that we're trying to hold anything over. He is an elected official and him being able to do his job, but we just think that's a good way to sort of have those things listed. Does the committee have any questions in regards to the Department of Law on this? No. Let me just say real quick, and we're short on time. Are we able by statute to have assistant, associate, I don't know what you call them, by deputy attorney generals, attorneys general, I guess is the proper way. But are we able to have those folks work for the attorney general and be dedicated to a department within the state, and basically assigned to work with them? They report legally up there. The reason I ask that, I'm hard pressed not to embark upon a mission to get some attorneys out of departments so that we don't have them looking at things that we then have to send to the Attorney General to look at. But to be honest, I've heard a little, and it may be your bandwidth, maybe a bandwidth question. The pushback is, but when we send something to the Attorney General's office to get reviewed, it takes a while. We can statutorily do that, have attorneys general deputies attached to departments.
Well, I think the way it is set up now is that the assistant attorney generals work at the discretion of the attorney general, serve at the pleasure of the attorney general, and the attorney general, as an elected official, is charged with the responsibility of determining the priorities within the office. In response to your question about the pushback you've gotten, I think what that's a result of is the chronic understaffing that we've had over the years. So if we could get our staffing to the appropriate
If you got
level,
those to the right place, or if we sent monies to do certain things.
We do have right now a very few limited positions, not attorney positions, but I think paralegal and secretary positions that are paid for by other agencies that are doing work solely related to those agencies' work. So.
Okay. Very well. Very well. Thank you very much. If there are no questions, we'll go. If the committee members can hang with, we have two departments left. I know pardons and paroles. I see you back there. Y'all have been here all day too. We would, a couple of the committee members would like to have you guys here when corrections here. I know your budget is very short. Would you mind coming back to visit with us on Monday as well? I apologize. I owe you a cup of coffee or a soft drink. I appreciate it. Thank you. Again, you've heard today sort of what we're looking to have a discussion over. If you would do that. The last department, if the committee can hang with me here, will be quick, is Department of Public Safety.
Good afternoon. Colonel Hitchens couldn't be here. He had other duties as well. I'm on page 18 of 18 of 07 amended. The top item there is an attached agency request. That's for post council. Those funds are to develop pretty much a web-based system where they can relieve themselves of being data entry and have the actual agencies with peace officers do that. We are humbled with 37.5.1 and 5.2, the support of the committee. And outside of that, the last thing there is the funds that are essentially a pass-through from our agency for House Bill 101 of last year to POAB. That's it for 07 amended.
Committee questions? Chairman Knox. I think Chairman Knox had a question related to that.
With regard to the patrol cars that we want to add, these are additional cars. They're not replacement cars, are they?
Well, these will replace high mileage vehicles, yes, sir.
Okay, so we're not we're not getting any more vehicles?
No, sir.
Okay. Did this come up in the Senate hearings on this? I guess you've had some discussions with them as well on the budget.
Yes, sir.
Was there any issue raised in those hearings about whether or not we needed more cars or needed to replace cars or anything like that?
No, sir. The question just is could those funds be expended in the 08 budget for the same thing? And to us, whether we receive it in 07 amended or 08, we're appreciative to get it wherever it's placed.
That was the only issue then with them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
For 08, we also submitted a flat budget as directed. We didn't have any new programs. We've discussed before the only one thing that was in there was interoperability, the $1.2 million in change, and that was nothing more than to pay the phone bill for the T1 lines for that program.
Committee have any questions in regards to this item? I appreciate the Senate's wish to move certain projects I guess around, and certainly respect their input into the idea. But on this one, I'm going to respectfully disagree with postponing it. By definition, government takes longer to do anything else in the world. In my opinion, you guys have, well, it's not an opinion, it's fact that you have cars over the mileage limit that we would normally think of as a safe place. Is that not true?
I wouldn't disagree with you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not putting you between me and the Senate. We have those cars. We know that today. If we have funding available, I think it would be prudent to start the process. And the reason I would say that is, even though this budget is not going to be complete and signed off till the end of May, if the money is available in the 07 year, do you not have a state contract to purchase these vehicles?
Yes, sir, we do.
And we could move that process, on along, get them on order, get them painted, and get them on the road. If we know we're going to do that, with due respect, on this one, I would say waiting till 08 is a form over function situation, and may take away the sense of urgency. There will be a bit of a sense of urgency to get those cars ordered and encumbered and on the road. I kind of like that, because I fear if we put the money in the 08 budget, those cars go on the road in May or June 08. So I understand the Senate, and I'm sure that'll be talked about in the appropriate conference, but and it's valid for conversation. But on this one, I think if we know we've got vehicles over a mileage and we know we're going to incur maintenance on those vehicles, I fear putting this money into the 08 budget keeps less than adequate, less than optimal conditions out there driving, and would hope we could work with them to get this funded for you. Almost went with council again. Committee have any questions regarding the public safety budget? Let me ask you this: did they express any concern if you're at liberty? So I guess you were in public discourse discussion with them with the funding that we had recommended for your first sergeants and lieutenants?
It was discussed, sir. I think Joe Hood addressed it the best, that that was from last year's disparagement between the language and the
Right.
funds that were actually appropriated, and whether, if that was moved to the 08, that could properly be distributed because of an 07 bill. So the proper place for it is in the 07 amended.
Did they express pause with that, or just
No, sir.
discussion with that? Just want to talk about. That's fair. I mean, that's what the process is supposed to be. I just
No, sir.
Just was curious on that because we want to work with our colleagues. I think does Senator Hamrick have the budget over there?
Yes, sir, he does.
Good man. We want to work with him, but maybe I can buy him a cup of coffee and get you the cars on time. I appreciate the senator and all he does. We've worked together well down here. If there's no further business, no further questions for the gentleman, I thank everybody for coming.
Thank you, Mr.
We'll get a
Chairman.
note out this afternoon, and we'll do the next meeting on Monday afternoon. Afternoon, yeah, we'll do it afternoon. If there's no further business, we'll stand adjourned without objection. Without objection, we are adjourned.